Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Cowl. Today we are working on our unit 2, which is various joining techniques for joining your squares or any crochet work actually. Today we are going to be doing the mattress stitch and the chain join. So mattress stitch is done using a nice blunt yarn needle and a piece of yarn and some scissors, and then the chain join will be with your hook. Okay, so I have my hook here ready as well. So we're going to start with the mattress stitch today. I'm using a highly contrasting piece of yarn with these two squares just to show you how it works. Ideally you would use a colour of yarn that will sort of blend in with your work. But the beauty of mattress stitch is that it does give a virtually invisible theme, and it will bring your squares nicely together, and like I said, give you an almost invisible join. So it's really useful if you're joining two pieces of the same colour, which these aren't quite the same colour, they're slightly different. But it does work well for that, and if you want to hide where pieces connect, so it's a really good join for using on clothing if you're making clothing or anything like that. So what we're going to do first of all is thread your needle. You don't need to make a knot or anything, just leave this other end free. And another thing to say about this stitch is it works on squares where you are working into the actual stitch. So if you look at this square here, you can see the actual stitches along the edge. Okay, this is a traditional granny square. I haven't sewn the ends in of this one. This is a traditional granny square, and so it has the stitches around, and in between I have chains. So they are as good as having stitches. So I have stitches all the way around, and this one is the closed granny. And this one again has stitches all the way around, unlike this one, no, not that one, this one here. These two squares were worked in rows. Now because they were worked in rows and not in the round like these worked in the round, I have the ends of rows here, so I don't have actual stitches, I just have the ends of my double crochets or chains. The top and at the bottom I have stitches, but not on the sides. So this is the one where I did the single crochet join last week with you. So mattress stitch does not work particularly on those ends of stitches. You need actual stitches to work into for this. But one nice thing about the mattress stitch is this is where I did the single crochet join, and it gives you that raised texture like I showed you last week, and there is a video for that if you look in the playlists. So mattress stitch works well if you wanted to join the tops of your squares. You could make some of this invisible, and then along these side joins you could make a nice texture, so you'd have some of it flat and some of it with texture. Completely up to you, but like I said, you do really need to have actual stitches to work into. Okay, now I haven't counted these stitches, I'm just going to wing it and see how it goes, and just if I feel that I need to work 2 stitches into one, I will do, or if I need to skip a stitch, then I will do that too. Last week I did talk to you a bit about skipping stitches or doing 2 into 1, and that works just as well. So with mattress stitch you want to have the backs together. Okay, so you want to take your top square. Now if you have stitches in the corner as opposed to chains, you want to go into your centre stitch. Excuse me, but as I've got chains, I'm going to go in the second chain. I've got 2 chains here, so the second chain, 1, 2, the second one is what belongs to this side. So I'm going to go under the top 2 loops and over the third. So if you can see, there is 1 loop there at the back, and there are 2 loops of that chain on top. So I'm going to go through there, and then I'm going to go through and under the 2 loops of the next stitch. Okay, pull that through. And then I'm going to go over to my next square, have them back to back, and I'm going to go under the top 2 loops of that chain in that corner. That has 2 chains in the corner, just the same as my starting square. So I'm going to go through there, and then I'm going to come through the stitch next to it, through those top 2 loops of the stitch next to it. Okay, and then I'm going to come over and, sorry, I'm going to come from the back into the stitch that I was in originally, or the last stitch on this side, and then through to the next stitch, okay? And then on the other side, I'm going to go back into the last stitch I was in. Just try not to get your tail caught up in this for a start. Keep that tucked down there. So you've gone back into the stitch you were last in, and then come round and into the next stitch, through those 2 loops on top there, and then back to the stitch you were in on the front square, and into the stitch next to it, and then into the stitch you were last in on the back square, and through to the next stitch, and then through to the last stitch on the front square, into the next stitch, through to the last stitch on the back square, and then we've got a chain here, so we're going to go under those top 2 loops and over the bottom or back loop, whichever way you describe it. So you can see there's 1 loop at the back there and 2 loops on top, so pull through there, and then into the same stitch on the front square and back through the next stitch. And then when you've got a few stitches like so, hold on to the tail and the 2 pieces of work and gently but firmly pull on this working yarn. Gently and firmly holding on to the tail. Pull the tail for the last stitch at the bottom if you need to, and that has pretty much cinched that up. And if I open it out, there is not a lot to show for that stitch. If I turn it sideways, you can see a little tiny bit of the very last stitch there, but bear in mind that won't be as tight as what's in the centre, and you can see a tiny bit there, tiny bit, and on the other side you can see a little bit, but not much at all. So you're going to continue working your way up, just loosen that last stitch a little and go back over the other side and through. Okay, so always going back into the stitch you were last in and then through to the next stitch. Okay, and that is how you do the almost invisible mattress stitch on your crochet. Nice and simple. It cinches it in nicely and gives you hardly anything to see afterwards. And you can imagine if I was using the same colour yarn as these 2 squares, if I was using a pale blue or a pale pink, there would not be much to see at all. You can see these blues because it's a much deeper colour, but if you were using the same colour it would not show. So I'm going to work up the rest of this side and then I'll come and show you how it looks. Okay, and you can see once you've got the hang of it you can kind of do it fairly quickly. So I'm going to finish the side and then I'll come back and show you how a whole side looks. Okay, so I've sewn along for the entire side together. So you can see just a tiny bit of this. And as I said, if it was in the same kind of colour, it would just blend in so nicely. On this side, you can see even less. So, and if I turn it the other way, you can see hardly anything at all. So if you prefer this side where you really can see hardly anything, then what you can do is I sewed these with the back sides together, so the wrong sides were together. But if you sew them with the mattress stitch with the right sides together, then this nice neater seam will be on the outside, and this slight ridge will be on the inside. You can see there's a very slight ridge there, not much at all. They lay side by side quite nicely, and there we go. So all that you would need to do then is just weave your ends in nice and securely and fasten off. So that is the almost invisible mattress join. Nice and quick, nice and simple. Okay, so the next join I'm going to show you is the chain join, and for that you'll need your crochet hook. Okay, we're going to move on to doing the chain join now. Now, I'm just going to use these squares because these squares are the ones that have were worked in rows, so it has ends of rows here, the ends of double crochets. So, oh, and I also have this here that I've just shown you when we did the mattress stitch. So this has actual stitches. So the chain join is perfect for anything like this with ends of rows, and also of course for when you have actual stitches to work into. It works brilliantly for mixing and matching and making it work. So what you're going to do is take your yarn, and I'm just going to make a slip knot on my yarn. And I am using a 4mm hook today. Normally, to make these squares, I used a 4.5, but I just wanted to keep these chains a little bit smaller than normal. So what I'm going to do is take the right side of this square and the right side of this square. Sorry, the back side. What am I doing? Okay, back side. There we go. Okay, and what I'm going to do is start in this bottom corner and just secure my yarn with a slip stitch. Now, there's a few variations of the chain join. I'm going to show you a couple and then tell you how you can continue yourself. So, I am going to use a chain of 3 and the slip stitch. Okay, so what I'm going to do is chain 3, then I am going to, just for this first one, actually just this first one, I'm going to chain 1 and then I'm going to secure to the other corner. So the first corner of the back square, I'm going to secure to there with a slip stitch as well. Okay, just to secure that bottom corner so they're together, and then I'm going to chain 3, and then I'm going to come up this side and I'm going to skip a stitch. Well, I don't actually have stitches, so I'm just going to skip a little way and do a slip stitch and then chain 3, and then I'm going to do the same on the other side, skip a stitch and then go in with a slip stitch. Okay, and then chain 3. You're kind of going to do a zigzag motion, so then I'm going to come back on this side and do a slip stitch a little way up, because remember this side doesn't have stitches. So then chain 3, skip a stitch or 2 on the back. If you keep them lined up, you can see roughly where you want to go. So I'm just going to look over the back and I'm going to skip a couple of stitches, go in there and do a slip stitch. That was a little bit backwards, I apologise for that. Okay, so 3 more chains, then I'm going to come back to the front and just go up here, do a slip stitch, chain 3, and then do one in the back, chain 3, come back to this front one, skip a little way, do a slip stitch, chain 3, and then in the back. Okay, so you can see how we're going. We're just alternating the sides, and I'm doing 3 stitches and then a slip stitch to join. Skipping a couple. Okay, make sure they're still meeting at the top, and then it's all going well. I'm just going to continue this one on camera with you, just so you can see how I'm working, and then I'll open it out and show you how it looks. So you can see though how this is really forgiving for whether you've got different stitch counts on the front square and the back square, whether you're working in the sides of rows and working into stitches. It works for all of those together. The mattress stitch that we did just a moment ago, you needed actual stitches to work into. This one you can work into stitches, ends of rows, wherever you like, just don't catch your yarn like I just did. Okay, so, and this is so quick and easy, perfect. And you don't want to have to think too much about what you're doing. So you can see I've just got a little gap left, so I'm just going to do another chain 3, go to there, and then I'm going to finish my top as I started the bottom. You know, I like the top and the bottom to join together, so it's going to go in there, and then do chain 3, come over to this side and into this very top corner. Work that into that top corner, and then I'm going to go over to this side into that corner and do a slip stitch there, and then fasten off. And then I'm going to show you, you have this kind of zigzag chain all the way from the bottom to the top. Beautiful, it allows a bit of movement, whereas some of these, like the mattress stitch we've just done, is very solid, doesn't move much, it's the actual square moving. This one just allows it to move a little bit, and I love that. I think it looks really, really cool. That nice bit of zigzag, and it's pretty much the same front and back, so it's totally reversible. So that is the chain join. I'm going to show you a variation on that in just a second. Let's just bring that back into camera so you can see that join, that chain join, and then I'll show you a different variation on that. So a different variation on this chain join is that you can use 1, 2 or 3 chains. It's completely up to you, and you can use the single crochet as well if you like, instead of the slip stitch, which gives it a bit of extra texture. So I'm just going to bring in this one. You might recognise this from last week. This was the whip stitch. So I'm going to have some very random joining on here, but hey, never mind. So I'm going to bring this square in and just pop the sides together. So I've got right sides facing outwards. Now these have both got stitches here. This one is actual stitches, and that's stitches rather than end of rows, which I just had. So I'm going to bring my yarn back in, Okay, so for this one I'm going to do the single crochet. I'm just going to go into the center stitch of the corner, which is that one, and do a single crochet. Okay, and then I'm going to just chain 2 and do a single crochet into this corner as well, just as before when I made sure the bottom 2 were aligned. Where is it? Here. So I just made sure that the top 2 and the bottom 2 stitches were in line. Okay, and then what you're going to do is, just as before, only this time, I'm going to make single crochets. So I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to come across and just skip a couple of stitches and do a single crochet. Chain 2, go to the one behind, skip a couple of stitches, and do a single crochet. Make sure I do a single crochet, not a slip stitch now. My head is turned on for doing slip stitches, so just make sure that you're doing the correct amount. Chains, so 2 chains and a single crochet. Chain 2 and a single crochet. Okay, so doing chain 2 and single crochet, and then it just gives you a slightly bit more texture on your square, and you can see how it's pretty much the same, but these single crochets are just giving it a little bit of extra texture. So I'll just do a bit more of that for you to see. So I am just literally skipping a stitch on either side and then doing that single crochet, chain 2 and single crochet. Okay, make sure from time to time that they're still lined up at the end, that you're not sort of getting carried away. And then if you can see, you might need to skip an extra stitch this side, so that's what I'm going to do this time. So I'm just going to skip an extra stitch, because that side's obviously got a few more stitches. Some more yarn. Oops, it doesn't want to come out. Okay, so let me just work this one up and show you what we have. So I'm going to continue working this one up, and then I'll show you the result when I've finished. Okay, so once again I just made sure that the top 2 stitches lined up just as I did at the bottom, and then there is my chain 2 and single crochet join. Okay, so just a little bit different than the other, which is here. So this is 1, chain 2 and single crochets, and this is chain 3 and slip stitch. So this kind of makes quite a feature of your joining. Obviously, if you were using if your squares were similar colours and you were using a colour similar to those, it would blend in a lot more than mine has. Mine kind of stands out and makes quite a feature of it. So that would be entirely up to you as to whether you wanted to make it more of a feature or blend in. Certainly if you had a colour scheme on your squares and you were using, you know, a few certain colours, then using one of those for this join would look gorgeous. It would be rather stunning. And then you could change up. If you were making strips, you could sort of use, you know, one colour down one strip, and then you could use another one of your colours down another strip, and it would look pretty good. So this is chain 2 and single crochets. This is chain 3 and slip stitch. Try and get those both in camera together, and you can see. But it also depends on how big you make your chains as well, as to how big your joints end up. Okay, and then we had our mattress stitch here. This is the back. So I hope you found this useful today, useful and helpful, and that you've got some inspiration from this as to how to be joining your squares or any crochet work you might have to join. Just make sure that when you when you sew your ends in, that you sew them in rather securely. Go back and forth a few times. Oh, excuse me. Go back and forth a few times and secure those ends nicely. Okay, so if you found this useful, then please click the like button, give us a thumbs up. As always, we appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed yet, then do hit that subscribe button and you will know as soon as we have a new video uploaded. We try and get them uploaded a little bit earlier than files go into the group. Give you a little bit of a bonus for being subscribers. Until next time, just keep hooking and don't let your tea get cold.